Hello, honeys. My apologies for the delay on your last Beesness episode of the month of June for 2024, but here we go. Let's just pretend it's still Tuesday. One quick announcement before we actually get started with the episode. I will be going on vacation to spend the week with my family, and while I will do my best to produce a Beesness on Tuesday, July, what's that going to be? The 3rd, 2nd? I make no promises, as I've been really needing this vacation and this family time. And so let's begin. Our first segment, pretty much as always, is going to be follow-ups. Our first one is a slightly tangential one. We're talking about how the Luma Arles has opened a French run of Recreate Tirvanija a lot of people. Tirvanija is an artist who was featured in our last chapter of Art That Pisses People Off, Going Bananas. In the early 1990s, Tirvanija, who is Thai, born 1961, gained popularity for his culinary works that often took place in galleries and museums. The traveling show began at MoMA PS1 last fall, and the institution says that it, quote, explores over 4 decades of the artist's groundbreaking career, end quote, featuring not only the interactive works that he's known for, but sculptures, film, photographs, paintings, and works on paper as well. In a previous Beesness, we mentioned that Vivienne Westwood's estate was auctioning off several pieces of hers at Christie's in London, and several of those looks have gone on display ahead of time. The items on display include several dresses, one men's pantsuit, some other individual pieces, and many from 1990 or later will be shown at the auction house as well. This is likely done to drum up further excitement. It's a pretty typical strategy of theirs, and occurs ahead of that live sale set for June 25th. The online version of the sale will run from Friday through June 28th. Last week also saw climate activists move from soupings and other attacks to orange paint in a recent spike of activity. More specifically, Stonehenge was attacked last week by activists using said orange paint. And now, honeys, I try to be really careful with my words, how I frame things, but I'm gonna say attacked this time because unlike in the soupings, or the spray paint of Me Too over Courbet's Origin of the World, the stones here have no protective covers or museum guards, and they actually suffered long-term damage from this event. One day before the annual summer solstice celebrations at the site, the megaliths were sprayed by Just Stop Oil protesters, an environmental group that addresses human-driven climate change and which has been behind many of the climate-based demonstrations in art museums since the new year. Forbes requotes the publication Gazette and Herald that 2 people were arrested in connection with the sprayings: Niam Lynch, 21, from Oxford, and Rajan Naidu, 73, from Birmingham. Though the group behind this spraying, Just Stop Oil, says that the substance is made of orange corn flour and it should be washed away by the rain, BBC reports that experts are hesitant to take them at their word. They will want to reassess these stones to see if damage has been done to them, and especially to any of their sensitive prehistoric markings. Also, though I was unable to find any official news about it, it appears, based on reels that yours truly saw circulating Instagram last week, that the protesters also sprayed some of Taylor Swift's Jets orange. I decided to feature this story, honeys, because first of all, we always care about art becoming a lightning rod for any social issue, and also because I feel torn here about the fact of the destruction versus its purpose. We care a lot about art conservation, we care a lot about the environment, yet here the two are forced into conflict, across a divide, and it's hard to pick sides. This is especially true, in my opinion, because in part their actions don't seem aligned with their stated goals. They appear at least short-sighted. One of the 2 men arrested, Lynch, stated in a Just Stop Oil website press release that they did this to point out the state of the natural world during the summer solstice celebrations, specifically asking about what legacies we leave behind. Well, the immediate question raised is, what about their own legacy? What about the destruction they have just caused? Stonehenge and its legacy seem an unfair target as the attack results in one less site and event for people to interact or connect with the natural world in a way that could have long-term impact upon these individuals. Such opportunities have been taken away or at least lessened by this orange activism. Looking further into this story only raised bigger questions for me, centering on what they hoped really to accomplish with the British and international publics who love the monument and its earthly associations. My own concern is that they may have only succeeded in drawing negative attention to the group, and this may hinder their efforts later on. And as we've also been keeping an eye on festivals and other major arts world events throughout the spring, thought I'd mention Art Basel has awarded its first People's Pick Prize to the artist Francisco Sierra. The first ever edition of this prize was won by the Chilean artist's 2024 installation work titled Guppy, which featured 48 wooden panels, each with its own life-size guppy depicted in concave relief, that was presented by the Basel-based gallery Von Bartha in the Unlimited sector, which we talk about in great detail in this month's Honey Drop, if you would like a deeper explanation of what that sector is exactly. But nevertheless, the piece aims to mirror the aesthetic of home aquariums because it is trying to critique recreational animal breeding. Artsy.net, who broke the story, notes of Sierra that his work, quote, is defined by an interest in subverting everyday ideas with conceptual or surreal methods. Employing humor and irony, his photorealistic drawings and paintings question contemporary life, end quote. A quick rundown of the other prizes and winners named in the article. In second place, Japanese installation artist Chiharu Shiatu for The Extended Line, done in 2024, presented by Templon. In third place was Chinese painter and photographer Wu Tiancheng for his work Farewell Spring and Autumn Pavilions of 2024, presented by Kang Gallery. And the Beloy Art Prize was awarded to Hong Kong-born artist and filmmaker Tiffany Sia and Sudanese-Norwegian artist Ahmed Umar. Last week had a nice variety of announcements and discoveries type headlines. Let's go through a quick rundown. First, because you'll never get away from my love for my home city, our Bean has reopened after nearly a year of construction. As of Sunday of last week, the fences surrounding the site are finally down. You can once again selfie more safely and with easier access at the iconic statue. NBC Chicago reports that work on the plaza surrounding Cloud Gate included lots of new stairs, accessible ramps, and a waterproofing system to make sure that you can enjoy it all the more. Last week, we also received word that a new online archive has made thousands of Picasso's rare works available. This was done courtesy of the Picasso Museum in Paris. Radio France Internationale reported on Sunday of last week that this was released ahead of a dedicated study center intended for researchers as well as artists in residence, which will open near the museum later this year. The new archive provides digital access to thousands of his artworks, photography, related memorabilia, including some of Picasso's essays, conferences, podcasts, and interviews. We obviously care about this and are excited because it's a huge opportunity for even casual historians, much less art lovers, and designers, anyone interested in or inspired by or even critical of Picasso's life or works, to use as a resource for further study or inspiration. On a bit sadder of a note, we do have a few obituaries this week. First, Barbara Gladstone, the legendary New York dealer who minted various art stars over the years, died at age 89 on Sunday in Paris following a brief illness. Her gallery confirmed her death in an email sent to the press on Monday of last week. Art News reports that once an art history professor at Hofstra University, she grew Gladstone galleries since 1980 to include locations in New York, Brussels, Seoul, Rome, and debuted many celebrated artists. Examples include Wangechi Mutu, Keith Haring, Robert Rauschenberg, Carrie Mae Weems, and many others. Their article noting that she, quote, rose to become one of the city's most notable dealers, end quote. Her staff and artists, in a joint statement, celebrated her compassion towards their development in their practices and the advocacy that she did on her artists' behalves. Last week also saw the passing of John Wilmerding, who's well known for defining what exactly American art identity was in the 20th century. He passed away at 86 on June 6 in Manhattan, we learned last week, as a result of complications from congestive heart failure. The New York Times describes him as, quote, a towering figure in American art whose eclectic career as a scholar, museum curator, and collector was instrumental in elevating the cultural significance and market value of painters such as Winslow Homer, Thomas Eakins, and Fitzhenry Lane, end quote. H&M announced last week a collaboration between itself, the group Who Decides War, and the estate of Basquiat, described by Vogue as a, quote, collaboration within a collaboration, end quote. It's inspired by jazz, which was also full of improv throughout its design process. Said Who Decides War's Eve Bravido, quote, rather than focus on Basquiat's well-known crowns and dinosaurs, the designers opted to focus on the late artist's lesser-known work, end quote. The process of making the clothing paralleled Basquiat's own process at various stages itself. Basquiat famously returned time and again to add to his paintings. Bravido is known for adding treatments to their garments. Both are also famous for working towards a higher purpose. Bravido and design partner Tela D'Amour wanted to celebrate and recall Black artists' experiences within this collection, and that's part of the reason we care enough to include this story. The level of thought behind the line and the attempts to inspire art historical research and interest through it. The two design partners explained that they want customers to look into the artists behind the clothes, to see the influences on and later of Basquiat as a bigger picture within part of Black culture. They also make references to the physicality and process of painting. They use the white denim basis of the garments as a stand-in for canvas. In our legal and institutional news, a rare partnership was announced last week by two Amsterdam museums for an enormous Anselm Kiefer exhibition. It will be presented across the Stedelijk Museum and the Van Gogh Museum in an unprecedented collaboration set to open in 2025, running from March through June. It will form two interconnected parts that trace key paths in the career and art of the artist, as well as creative influences from his past and upon works that have come since him. Kiefer's exhibition will be headlined by a new 24-meter-long work that the artist will unveil at the Stedelijk, joined by other works already in the museum collections obtained throughout their long relationship. The museum staff quoted in the announcement article describe how after his birth in, Donaueschingen in 1945, Kiefer went on to make an unflinching set of works that confront the myth-making, grief, silence of post-war Germany with a particular focus on Impressionist, specifically Van Gogh, influences on the artist. Next, a 12th century pilaster was returned by the Art Institute of Chicago to Thailand's Phanom Rung Temple. The object in question was a fragment of a pilaster, or a rectangular column often protruding from a wall like around a doorframe, with the Hindu deity Krishna lifting Mount Govardhana. It was once again returned because of this further provenance research that showed things were not as the provenance team at AIC once thought in terms of its origin or acquisition process. It was once thought to originate from Cambodia, but new research identifies its origins as northeastern Thailand, said Phnombucha Chandrajodi, Director General of the Fine Arts Department of the Kingdom of Thailand, quote, "This act serves as a model for ethical collecting practices and strengthens the bond of cultural respect and collaboration between Thailand and the AIC," end quote. The Smithsonian also announced last week their portrait exhibition of the activist Opal Lee, who made Juneteenth a federal holiday. A quick reminder that Juneteenth is celebrated as the anniversary of the day that the news of freedom reached the enslaved black people in Galveston, Texas, a full 2.5 years post-Emancipation Proclamation. The Smithsonian summarizes Lee as the grandmother of Juneteenth, who is a retired teacher and counselor who grew up celebrating the holiday in Texas. According to the institution's own announcement post, she, at age 89 in 2016, led her first Opal's Walk to DC march to advocate for Juneteenth to be recognized as a federal holiday, symbolizing through the distance that period of delay before liberation inspired similar events across the United States, and 5 years later, the holiday became an official national one. The portrait of Lee by Texas artist Cedric Huckabee is on view in the National Portrait Gallery after having traveled around the country for various exhibitions. Leonardo da Vinci's La Bella Principessa has also started to make history with its new display in the Kazakh capital. This exhibition has marked a huge moment since its opening on June 7th, as it's the first time a Da Vinci has traveled to Central Asia for display, and only the 6th time total this specific work has been publicly exhibited. The Asana Times notes there was 6 months of effort behind the work's travel and the show itself, with other features to include incorporated digital elements, such as large LED walls and projector rooms. Ambassador of Italy Marco Alberti told the Asana Times, quote, "Culture promotion is a powerful driver of dialogue and foreign policy," end quote, noting the rare nature of its work for scarcity and materials included within it. The show and this level of cultural exchange has been celebrated as a huge deal, especially because European museums, cough cough, British Museum, are rare to loan works to so-called risky nations, often due to unfair prejudices. We love seeing these conscious efforts to work counter to those attitudes. In a rather unusual, yet still effective restitution solution announced last week, a Swiss museum is set to sell a Monet bought from a Jewish person under duress who was fleeing the Nazis. The piece in question is titled Man with a Parasol and dated to the late 19th century. The story behind it is that Kunsthaus Zurich said the painting was sold, under duress of course, to them by Karl Sachs, a Jewish entrepreneur and art collector who was trying to make a living at this point, but later fled to Switzerland in the late 1930s to avoid Nazi capture. He unfortunately did die, though, in 1943. Sachs's heirs have welcomed the move, as the sale proceeds will be split between the art gallery and themselves. A lawyer speaking on behalf of the family said they think this agreement is just. Moving to our next set of categories, after barely escaping a trip to Goodwill, a lost Onderdonk painting is now up for grabs. The work in question is Julian Onderdonk's A Field of Blue Bonnets, San Antonio. It was gifted to an Illinois family back in 1922 and has been passed down for decades before anybody realized its value. They nearly almost lost it. In fact, when it was packed into a truck headed for donation, the owner changed their mind at the last moment. The Dallas Morning News drew attention to this situation, reporting that a press release from Heritage Auctions says they expect it to sell for between $30,000 and $50,000, with the current bid at $15,000. This is likely because Onderdonk is one of the most significant painters in Texas history. Quote, a 2008 Dallas Museum of Art retrospective wrote that during his short life, Julian Onderdonk transformed the Texas landscape, creating indelible images of the Lone Star State, end all quotes. He's best known for his paintings of the state flower. The work will form one out of 107 total lots in the Texas Art Signature Auction to be held on June 29th by Heritage Auction House. In a slightly more embarrassing story for those involved, the band Interpol had to apologize publicly last week for inadvertently ripping off an artist for their tour campaign posters. The promotional and informational poster for the upcoming 20th anniversary tour of their sophomore album raised alarms with a friend of the mural artist Tony Showman, who noticed close similarities between a Showman painting and that flyer. The friend took to Instagram to raise the similarities to attention, and the band responded quickly afterwards with an apologetic statement denying knowledge of the tour graphics' origins or inspiration, though they did promise to increase their due diligence on these things going forward. Showman and Interpol quickly forgot, and started bonding on the platform, but whoever designed that poster is sure to be in big trouble. And our last story, a bit miscellaneous, but certainly not least, Carrie Mae Weems has returned to her very celebrated Kitchen Table series for a series of Bottega Veneta ads featuring A$AP Rocky. The Kitchen Table series is one of the photographer's most famous, if not the most. It's a series taken of Weems taking on other personas, posing as mothers, daughters, and other figures, and which centered on selfhood, especially in relationship to others, and looked closely at the many roles that Black women occupy. Art News notes that the series has been celebrated because racial themes are not always immediately legible. Instead, as Weems herself once said, quote, "I think the series is important in relationship to Black experience, but it's not about race," end quote. The new campaign is revealed as a nod to the holiday of Father's Day when it was dropped, and is called Portraits of Fatherhood. It's mostly still images with a video in which the rapper plays with his children, and special attention is drawn in the announcement articles to images in which Weems appears behind A$AP Rocky, who is seated before a mirror at a kitchen table. That image has gained special attention likely because it is a clear allusion to Weems's most acclaimed picture from that series, Untitled Man and Mirror 1990, especially with their combination of bodily positions, its overall composition. The new ads were released less than a week before her show at Bard College's Hessel Museum of Art in upstate New York. Matthew Blasey, creative director of Bottega Veneta, told GQ that he intended to, in the future, broach similar ideas by commissioning Weems to create these new works, in his own words, noting that he's very honored for Weems and her vision to have taken on this project with Rocky, especially exploring fatherhood as a concept today. Blasey emphasized the intimacy of the images and how much Rocky appears as a father and man beyond a public persona. Either way, pretty unusual collaboration format and art historical allusions. Very excited to see what comes of this partnership in the future. Alright, honeys, I am aware we went kind of long, a lot long, on this episode today, but there were just so many great headlines from the last week that all I can say is simply, you're welcome. As I stated at the top of the episode, I will be on vacation next week, so definitely no full-length episode, and no promises on a Beesness either. It may be an exceptionally short one, TBD. Nevertheless, I hope you've had a great Pride Month. I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July, if not celebrating the country of the U.S., at least being able to enjoy festivities and family/friend time. Take care of yourselves, honeys, and I will talk to you, if not next week, the one after. This podcast was created, produced, written, hosted, edited, and fact-checked by master's graduate Celia Bugno. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite streaming platforms as well as your social medias.